A box arrived at a workshop in the north of England, and the automotive world quietly shifted without realizing it had moved at all. Not a press kit, not a launch invitation, not a carefully orchestrated gesture from a communications department operating on a seven-figure annual budget. Just a padded package from a small town in rural Sweden, sent by a company that builds somewhere between 20 and 35 cars per year, addressed to a man who had spent years rescuing crashed hypercars from total destruction, while every major supercar brand in Europe responded with unbroken silence. Matt Armstrong had rebuilt Lamborghinis reduced to bare carbon tubs, restored Ferraris that insurance companies had permanently written off, and documented every hour of every build for an audience of over 5 million subscribers on YouTube, who watched because they genuinely wanted to understand the engineering behind these machines, not simply admire the result. The Italian supercar manufacturers absorbed all of that attention without acknowledgement. They received the parts revenue, the engineering celebration, the loyalty of a massive and highly engaged audience, and returned nothing in any form. No email, no acknowledgement, not a single word from any official channel at any point across years of sustained, detailed content. And then Koenigsegg, a company operating out of a converted military hangar in rural Sweden with around 500 employees, sent a box of branded merchandise and a handwritten note that cost less than £100, and changed the entire conversation about who actually understands the future of automotive enthusiasm and where brand loyalty gets built in this era. That sequence of events tells you everything about where the automotive industry stands right now, and what the brands still locked inside their own carefully managed mythology are failing to grasp about who actually shapes long-term opinion in their market. Matt Armstrong's reputation among automotive enthusiasts did not grow from press credentials or manufacturer relationships. It grew from buying destroyed machinery that nobody else wanted and refusing to let it disappear quietly. One of the most striking examples in his catalog was the Lamborghini Reventone, a car so rare that only 21 were ever produced. Released in 2007 on the Murcielago platform, it was a £1 million hypercar designed to showcase Lamborghini's most extreme design language of that era. And when one of those 21 cars ended up crashed and written off by an insurer, Matt acquired it and began filming the complete restoration from that state. Sourcing components for a car built in those numbers is not a straightforward process because every part had to come through Lamborghini's official supply chain, with no aftermarket existing for a production run that small. The engineering content he produced throughout that build was the kind of detailed, honest material that Lamborghini's own communications team had never attempted to create for any audience. Carbon fiber monocoque construction, broken down in granular detail. The V12 drivetrain architecture explained clearly. The electrical systems that even Lamborghini's own dealership technicians rarely encounter at that level of exposure. All of it documented for millions of viewers. Lamborghini's response was silence, and not indifference dressed up as something measured, just actual silence from a luxury brand simultaneously spending significant sums on traditional marketing campaigns that reached a fraction of the audience Matt was reaching every week for free. The same pattern played out with Ferrari. Matt had been working through a rebuild of the Ferrari 296 GTB, the brand's plug-in hybrid sports car representing the entire future direction of Ferrari's product lineup, using genuine OEM components sourced at real cost, and explaining the twin-turbo V6 and electric motor integration to an audience that Ferrari's own press materials rarely served with anything approaching that level of technical honesty. The 296 GTB is a technically involved machine, combining a combustion engine with an electric motor through a sophisticated energy recovery system, and Matt was doing the actual work of demystifying all of that for people who wanted to understand the hybrid architecture rather than simply desire the result. The energy he put into explaining how Ferrari integrates those two power sources, what the system actually involves at a mechanical level, was the kind of content that engineers and enthusiasts reference for years afterward. Ferrari responded with the same silence Lamborghini had offered, which made complete sense once you understood the fundamental operating philosophy driving the Italian automotive brands. Ferrari and Lamborghini have historically treated brand image like a sealed vault with controlled access at every point of entry. Approved journalists receive invitations to press launches at manicured circuits in Southern Europe, drive pre-prepared cars on pre-selected routes, and produce coverage that stays within understood limits. Approved photographers, approved narratives, approved vocabulary for discussing what these machines are and mean. These cars exist inside a constructed world where mystery functions as the actual product being sold alongside the engineering, where understanding is treated as something that diminishes rather than deepens the desire these brands depend on commercially. Independent creators, especially ones who buy wrecked machinery and restore it in workshops that look nothing like brand showrooms, do not fit inside that structure at all. If an activity falls outside the approved framework, the brand treats it as invisible, and neither the size of the audience watching nor the amount of money the creator has spent on genuine manufacturer components changes anything about that calculation. The situation surrounding Bugatti made that reality undeniable in a way that the Italian brand's sustained silence never quite had. Bugatti has long operated with an exclusivity that borders on hostile, and their contractual right of first refusal is the clearest public expression of that attitude. The clause allows Bugatti to intervene when an owner wants to sell their car, giving the brand power to effectively block buyers they consider unworthy of the mark, making ownership feel less like possession and more like a conditional arrangement the manufacturer can revoke. A public situation involving a prominent content creator being pushed entirely out of the picture circulated widely through the automotive community. And whatever the specific details in different accounts of that story, the consistent message was impossible to ignore. Certain legacy brands view independent creators not as people who expand their audience and build genuine cultural goodwill, but as threats to the controlled image and the gate-kept narrative that insists these machines belong in an approved world of sanitized coverage and carefully selected owners. Ferrari's legal action against the musician deadmau5 for wrapping his 458 Italia in a custom neon cat livery reinforced exactly that position. Ferrari argued the modification damaged brand image, following it with cease and desist letters directed at owners who had customized their cars in ways Ferrari's internal guidelines did not sanction. The message those actions sent was consistent enough to be read without interpretation. You may have paid for the car, but the brand's image belongs to the manufacturer, and any departure from the approved vision of how the product should appear will be corrected. For Matt Armstrong, none of this operated as abstract industry doctrine. He had been living a quieter version of that reality for years, not being actively blocked or legally pressured, simply being ignored. And ignoring someone carries its own specific message. When a brand pushes you out, it at least acknowledges you matter enough to be treated as a problem. When it takes the millions of views and the genuine celebration of its engineering, and the genuine expenditure on its components, and responds with nothing across years of consistent output, the signal is even more explicit. You fall beneath the minimum threshold worth acknowledging at all. What makes that silence so difficult to justify is what those millions of views actually represented. Matt's audience of 5 million subscribers is not casual or passive. These are engineers, mechanics, students, and committed automotive enthusiasts, watching because they come away from each video having actually learned something about how machines are built and why they perform the way they do. He does not make content about how a car feels from the driver's seat or how the leather smells. He works underneath the machine and documents its real condition, honestly. Corroded hardware, sourcing failures, wiring complications. The moments where a rebuild stalls because a single sensor cannot be located through any available channel. That honesty builds trust in a way that controlled press coverage structurally cannot generate. And trust with that specific audience is worth considerably more to any brand's long-term position than any quantity of invitation-only press events. Because these are the people forming the automotive opinions that will shape buying decisions across the next 3 decades of the industry. Koenigsegg understood that, and the understanding runs much deeper than one package sent to one creator. Christian von Koenigsegg founded his company in 1994 when he was 22 years old, with no automotive dynasty behind him, no significant outside funding, and no formal engineering qualification, working from a straightforward conviction that he wanted to build the fastest car in the world. What he assembled over the following 30 years was one of the most genuinely innovative engineering organizations anywhere in the automotive space. The free valve engine eliminates the traditional camshaft entirely, replacing it with pneumatic actuators that control each valve independently and allow the engine to optimize its performance on every single combustion cycle, rather than being constrained by a fixed mechanical profile. The Jesko Absolute is theoretically capable of reaching 330 miles per hour. The light-speed transmission shifts gears faster than any other gearbox in existence, using multiple wet clutches and no traditional synchromesh, achieving changes in virtually zero time. Christian von Koenigsegg himself is famously open about all of it, sitting down for long-form interviews, explaining technology in granular detail, and getting visibly excited discussing tolerances and thermodynamics in a way that most luxury automotive executives would consider completely undignified. In 2019, he spent over an hour with a small YouTube channel called The Car Guy, walking through the aerodynamic physics of the Jesko, explaining downforce coefficients and air channel routing with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely cannot believe this is what he gets to do professionally. Factory employees post content showing the carbon fiber layup process, the hand assembly of individual engines, and testing protocols that most manufacturers protect as proprietary trade detail. The entire company documents its own manufacturing operation, with a transparency that makes the established luxury automotive world visibly uncomfortable, and none of it is accidental. Christian von Koenigsegg has stated publicly that he wants people to understand his cars, not simply desire them, that engineering should be the attraction rather than the exclusivity constructed around restricted access. That is a fundamentally different worldview from the Italian approach, where mystery functions as the primary commercial asset, and openness is treated as a liability to be managed and minimized. Apply that lens to Matt Armstrong's channel, and the decision to send that box becomes straightforward. Koenigsegg spent roughly £100 on branded merchandise and a handwritten note, and generated thousands of hours of community discussion, millions of social media impressions, and real brand curiosity among 5 million highly engaged automotive enthusiasts who were already primed to care about serious engineering. Ferrari spent over €700 million on selling and administrative expenses in a single recent fiscal year. The return on investment comparison between those two figures is not worth attempting because the gap is too wide to be addressed by any conventional marketing framework. Toyota produces the same number of cars Koenigsegg builds in an entire year, roughly every few seconds. And yet, Koenigsegg is the brand dominating the conversation in enthusiast communities right now, not because of spending power, but because of a clearer understanding of where attention actually lives and how lasting loyalty actually forms in this era of automotive content. The generation forming its automotive opinions right now is not reading glossy car magazines or attending press launches in Tuscany. They are watching Matt Armstrong pull a Lamborghini SVJ Roadster back from a non-running crash-damaged state in a workshop in the north of England. And the brand that shows up in that world, that demonstrates it understands and respects what that creator is doing, earns loyalty that compounds over decades. Koenigsegg grasped that. Ferrari and Lamborghini, as of now, have not. The Italian brands protect mystery, guard image carefully, and control access with the conviction that exclusivity is the thing that makes their products worth wanting. Koenigsegg opens its doors and invites understanding rather than managing it from a distance. And that difference between brands that build walls around their image and a company that genuinely wants to be comprehended is exactly why a converted military hangar in rural Sweden made the move that decades of Italian automotive tradition never did, and apparently still cannot imagine making. Matt Armstrong did not pursue recognition. He built something genuine, spent his own money keeping it honest, documented it clearly for anyone willing to watch, and let the work exist in the open while the brands he was celebrating looked through him as if he were not there. And eventually, not from the direction anyone anticipated, and not from the industry he had served most consistently, something in that open space looked back.